welcome back to the Guitar and Music Institute series on bar chords. My name's Gary Clinton. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of the concepts we talked about in lesson 1. And we're going to look at the chord shapes we're going to be using to create the bars, and we're going to tie that in with the chromatic scale that was also mentioned in lesson 1 to show how that you can create chords in any key that you need to be in, which gives you great flexibility as a guitar player, and something that you absolutely need to know. So let's first of all look at our shapes. Here's a chord you're probably familiar with if you want to do bar chords. E major. Important feature of this chord is the root note is on the 6th string. Sometimes we call that a type 6 chord. Release the first finger. That gives us E minor. These are two shapes that we're going to bar. I'm just going to stay with the root note on the 6th string just now. I'm going to go back to E major again. I'm going to release my third finger this time. That introduces the note D, and that gives me an E7th chord, also known as E dominant 7th. So there's our three shapes for the root note on the 6th string. Let's look at the chord shapes with the root note on the 5th. So we're going to start with, again, a shape that you're hopefully familiar with, A major. A wee alteration here, you probably know A minor by now. Once again, the root note of this chord on the 5th string, it's a type 5 shape. If I go back to A major, just for a second, we're going to look at how to get to A7th, also known as A dominant 7th. I'm going to take my first finger away, I'm going to put my second finger where that first finger was. That gives me open G introduced into the chord. And there's A7. So that's given us 6 shapes. 3 shapes for the root note on the 6th string, and 3 shapes for the root note on the 5th string. And we're going to create bar chords with these according to the chromatic scale that was mentioned in the previous lesson. So let's first of all look at E major, good place to start. In order to bar it, we need to make our first finger free. So I'm just going to do a wee shuffle around. You can pause the video and stuff and have a look at what's going on with my left hand there. But I'm playing the same notes, but my first finger is now free. This allows me to do this. Take my shape up 1. That's a wee bit of a kind of Spanishy sounding chord if you don't have your first finger on. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to then place my first finger over the first fret, and I'm playing a bar chord. And again, tying it in with the chromatic scale, that note's F, so I'm now playing F major. Now, what you'll probably find as you first start playing bar chords is that you're going to get things like this. And it's going to sound a little bit not too good. You need to try and push through that and persevere through that, because eventually your strength will build up in these fingers. What's important with your fingers, and I see this in students that I teach a lot, is your fingers do this and they collapse. We don't want collapsed fingers on guitar. This is a weak position to be in. It's not got the pressure in the right place. You need to have pointy fingers. That's going to apply your pressure. Additionally, it also clears the top 2 strings here so that they can be played by your first finger. And there's the strum again of the chord. So you will probably find at first that you might get a wee bit of a sore hand when you're pushing these down. That is normal, but don't overdo it after maybe 15 minutes or so. If you feel that you're getting a bit of a stiff or a sore hand, give yourself a little bit of a break. But you need to try and keep persevering. They are difficult, but you will get there with them. Every single guitar player at one point in their guitar playing life can't play these chords. Anyone that you see playing bar chords at one point couldn't do it. So you need to remember that. And they give you so much flexibility. So let's look at now the minor. Now this one's even harder, unfortunately. I'm going to take, just like I did with the open shape, I'm going to take away the second finger. And this gives me F minor. Now my first finger is dealing with these 3 strings. That's the G string I usually find is the difficult one. Try to avoid putting a second finger on to push this first finger down. I sometimes see students doing that to try and give themselves a bit of extra pressure. So there's my major and minor. F major, F minor. Let's take it up the chromatic scale. Just move it up 1 fret. F major, F minor. Once again. G major, G minor. And you just can keep going all the way up the fretboard and you'll cover every single major and minor chord that's possible to play in music. Now what we want to do is we want to double that up. You want to get all those chords that you can play and you want to play them in a different position. So that's when we're going to look at the root note A string, the root note 5th string. Same concept. Shuffle the fingers so the first finger's now free. I'm going to move my shape up one, which is going to sound a bit weird just now. Could be a useful chord, who knows, for some weird song. First finger's going to go down on the first fret. Now what's important here, and I often see students doing this, is the first finger still goes on the low E, which is going to give you a different bass note. We don't want that quite yet, although they are chords that can be used, potentially. So this is actually giving me B flat or A sharp major. First finger's barring here and here. And I can now make it a minor chord by doing the same thing that I did before. I'm just going to do a reshuffle. B flat minor. Let's move it up a semitone. We'll go back to major. B major. B minor. Up a semitone again. C major. C minor. And I could keep going right up the fretboard until I reach the 12th fret. And that's given me major and minor chords played in two different ways, the root note on the 6th string and the root note on the 5th string, by playing bar chords. We also mentioned 7th chords, concept's exactly the same. There's E7, do a bit of a finger shuffle, keep your first finger free, bring this one up, let's bring this one up to A, let's put my first finger up to fret 5 this time. That gives me an A7. Again, the first finger that's been involved for this one, barring on the D string. You'll probably find that could be muted at first, but just keep persevering. Keep pushing that first finger down. Remember, at some point, any guitar player who can play bar chords at one point couldn't. Bear that in mind, that's important. So there's your 7th chord, that's A7, played at fret 5 on the low E. Let's now look at the root note 5th string, 7th chords. There's my A7. Same thing again, I'm going to rearrange my fingers so that my first finger's free, and I'll just push up here, B flat 7th, B7. Let's go right up to say fret number 8. It's going to give me F7, F sharp 7. So you see the concept, and this is the concept of the chromatic scale, and it's a principal concept. So it works for every single chord shape here. You don't need to make adjustments for certain keys or anything like that. Last thing for this lesson, let's look at a wee change. Let's say A major, moving to D major. So there's a wee thing for you to practice. So what this saves me doing, I suppose, I could also do that like this. I could take that shape up there, right up the fretboard, but we want to try and keep the left hand moving around as little as we can. So there's an A major changing to a D major, root 6 shape going to root 5th shape. Practice that with the minors, practice that with the 7ths. And there you go. We'll see you again next lesson.